Afternoon and welcome to the Indie Labels panel at Tallinn Music Week. Before we start, I would like to find out who we have in the audience. How many artists we have here? Okay, how many labels or people who are thinking about starting a small label? Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so I think we have the right audience then. So let me introduce, we have one change in the panel. Nils Bernstein from Matador Records USA couldn't make it to Europe because of the strikes in airport strikes in Germany. Luckily, we have a replacement. We have a Pip from Pias. Have they already changed it? Yeah, Pip Newby from Pias, UK. And he just joined us and was not part of the preparation, so he's going to improvise and we're going to improvise with him, but we know what Pias is. And so let's start with you know, all the labels here doing a short introduction, you know, who they are, when the label started, when they started with the label, how, with a couple of sentences, how did they get into this this label or label or music business, you know, maybe running a restaurant or running a record store or being a journalist or whatever, you know, just mention that. And then a few words about the label they represent, you know, when the label was started, how many releases so far, what kind of genres, how many releases annually. And then people don't know the labels, but they know they know the artist. So who are the main artists on that label? And if the company has other activities, if it's involved in something called 360 model, if there's some, you know, merchandising or booking or whatever, publishing. Okay, so let's start from you're right. So we start from our new panelist.
Afternoon. I'm a sort of a bit of a super sub right now, so excuse me because I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm Pip. I'm head of A&R for PS Recordings in the UK. PS has been around for about 30 years. We're probably best known as a distribution company. We represent a lot of independent labels across Europe and the world. I run A&R.
And some of those releases are quite specialist, and there's certainly a ceiling as to what they're ever going to sell. So you can say, I can't spend any money on all this, because it doesn't matter how much you throw at it. The audience is this big, you know, and it's never going to go beyond that point. And then there's other acts that you work with where the potential is on and on and on. So you kind of have to look at the artists you're working with or want to work with, see where you think they fit, and then decide how much you're prepared to gamble on that band. You know, it's quite that's how we approach it, I think.
Yeah, I think when you sign new band, you never know what they are. Just started band, young guys really. They have, it's their first kind of album they are going to do or whatever, and you have to be ready that after they will release or record this album, they can split easily, because they haven't been prepared really for what is it really, and that they don't have any success straight away, and sometimes you have to kind of invest in long terms that you see there is this potential, but these guys are not yet on that stage when they can become big. So it takes time, and yeah.
But I guess everybody's not signing from the scratch. I mean, at least we do sign quite a lot of our latest signings have been artists who have been on smaller labels in so-called farm league, if it would be like ice hockey or whatever sport, and you sign from there artists who have a bit of that you know, experience, and they have been gigging around a lot, and it doesn't happen so often. Not at least with us that we would sign a completely new band.
We are signing basically completely new bands.
And you're playing a different ball game than I am.
Yeah.
But that kind of shows that, you know, when someone talks about indie scene and indie labels, you know, it's you know, there's so many different business models and so many different sized indie labels. Some of the successful UK indies, you know, like the Beckers Group with, you know, Excel Recordings and Dominoes and all those, they are almost like you know, they are sometimes selling more than the majors are doing with Adele and that's that kind of artists. So there's not only, you know, there's not one size fits all. You know, there's so many different, and there are boutique labels that are focusing on just one type of a genre, and that might work in some genres, you know, because then you might be able to get label deals. You know, you might get distribution to everything you put out. But if you know, are a little bit more spread out and try different things, you know, you might not get a label, a distribution deal in another country, but so there's so many different models. You know, one of the busiest indie labels in Finland is a company that hasn't recorded any new stuff. They've been, you know, licensing masters from major labels, you know, from 70s and really interesting stuff that was never put out on CD. They put it out and press 500 copies and sell them, you know, and they release 30 albums a year and they are doing well. But that's, you know, you cannot repeat that. You know, someone might be able to do that kind of catalog, boutique indie label, but you know, it's not like something you should try to copy, you know, because it only works, you know, every now and then.
Yeah, that's true. So you're talking about Svart Records?
No, not
Yeah.
Svart, Rocket Records. Rocket Records, yeah. Svart also, you know, but that's even more specific because they re-release, you know, albums on vinyl, you know. The stuff that they license from Universal Records, some 70s Love Records, you know, catalog, you know, and they put them out on 180 gram vinyls and.
But that's anyhow a good thing for the industry, as there's some kind of development in kind of a distribution or whatever. Like the old things are transformed to the new generations. Like it's kind of having a new kind of bookstore or whatever. I think in UK it's much easier because there's much more audience to buy those things, but it's also happening in Finland little by little that we're selling much more vinyl than before, and of course it is a good thing, and it's also building something for the new labels to start from, and the people who are interested of kind of artistic things that are doing things in their own way is growing all the time, which is helping a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel that nowadays nobody wants to be a mainstream act. Everybody wants to be indie. It wasn't that way around when I started with my label.
We are so cool.
Well, I don't know about that either, but well, it's nowadays much more cooler to be indie than to be a major. Major is a kind of you get a label that you're more into, you know, making money than for the love of music. And I guess all here around this table or conversation are more into it for the love of music than making lots of money. Or how is it, boys?
I don't think anybody goes into releasing records, certainly as a business, expecting not to make any cash on it. But I think obviously you've got to treat everything quite pragmatically. You've got to go at things, sort of working out exactly what the risk is, what you're going to spend where, and working out the appropriate time to invest and the appropriate time to hold back on what you're spending. I don't know, like PS Recordings is, in terms of an indie, quite a big company. I mean, we release about 12 albums a year, but they're all quite high-profile acts, and we work those records across Europe and in fact the world increasingly. It is a business, and you have to treat it like a business if that's the way you're approaching it. If it's a hobby label or something very boutique where you're only releasing a very specific genre of music, that's a very different ballgame from running a big independent label where the idea is that you'll be making money year on year.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that we don't want to make money. Of course, we want to make money and get back the money we are investing into releases. But still, the approach is a bit different, even with big indies than the majors, who are, in my opinion, mostly for the stockholders and make kind of a product. Well, this is a cliché thing to say, but anyway, I say it.
I think where it gets interesting is when you accidentally have some success, where you didn't envisage it happening, and suddenly something happens and it goes off, and it is out of control. Suddenly it's all your dreams have come true. It looks like you're going to make a shed load of money. You're this small indie. You've got a very popular act. It's kicking off everywhere. You haven't got a clue why, but soon you get to meet all those people in the industry that you'd heard about. You're this tiny indie, and suddenly EMI are ringing you up, and Sony are on the phone, and you end up, you started a label to keep yourself away from all this business and all this kind of nonsense that you read about, heard about, you kicked against. I'm not part of that. And then suddenly you find yourself having to navigate this world, and that's where I think there's this indie and majors, and then there's the big indies, and but we're all we all want our acts to be successful. We all want them to be in the press. We all want to sell records for our acts. We want them to go out on tours and make money for themselves. So you are invested in the same business. You're all playing the same game, and you find your niche. You find a way of working in the industry that suits you and your label. The way we work is we like to work and sign very early on from demos. We encourage demos to come into us, we listen to them all, and we then look to develop that band from absolute zero. I think PS probably slightly different model.
It's exactly like that,
Yeah, and that's how, and we've come, people know us for doing that now. And unfortunately, the bigger labels know us for doing that now as well. And the majors kind of know us for doing that. So at any one point, you have an act, you get it away, maybe on your third album, and you're thinking, this is absolutely incredible, check this out. And then the same people come back into view, whether that be an EMI or Warner's, Universal, wherever it is, they suddenly become interested in that act that you've been developing, and we start again. They go, and there's this camaraderie amongst the indies, but there's also this sense that there is a middle. There's us indies down here that work from scratch, and then there's your XLs and your Beggars and your Dominoes, and they're kind of playing a slightly different game to us, and they kind of almost look at what we're doing down here, and they see opportunity there as well. So it can get quite competitive, I would say. If you accidentally have some success, you will find a whole load of competition for your act, and it's and it opens up another very interesting chapter in your label history, I would say.
Yeah, so in a way, one of the paradoxes is that, in the ideal world, it would be really best to grow organically, and slowly, and build, a solid foundation for the label without one act going really, through the roof, and because that's when your problems start also, and that's the big paradox. I mean, now it's
the grassroots, early doors, people adopting your releases, then you can't take it any higher. So, but you can do a lot of that work. That's part of the fun of running the label, is you get to meet all these people that work in these cool shops and do cool stuff, and it all goes hand in hand with that early stages of running a label. That's part of what you do. This is like when Pip says you ain't going to have enough time to do all this, because normally you're a one-man outfit, or there's two of you, and there's an awful lot of work you got to do to try and get rid of those 12 inches you've got by your bed. It's a lot of work, but again, this is where you make relationships, and I think running any kind of business is about the relationships that you make, and making those relationships with retail is key to you selling those records at the end of your bed.
Yeah, talking about distribution, for instance, in Riga we have, I think, 3 shops, music shops. So distribution we do ourselves. We are taking CDs, calling them when whether they need something, or bringing them our new stuff, and basically going there and bringing our stuff and putting here. Here in Estonia, we use bigger distribution chain, but it's kind of really complicated to. Okay, in our Baltic countries, it's sortable, but if you want to sell your records somewhere out from Baltics, you have to find some partners who would be ready to work with these artists, because just like we did in the very beginning, we had one 7-inch. We went to the London and got that in a rough trade shops. So I went, I think, after 2 years and saw that vinyl still there. So it just doesn't make sense to go and make a deal that they can take CDs or vinyls for sale if there's no any support like touring or radio or some promotion.
Yeah, I mean, must say one thing that obviously these UK boys we have here have a big advantage of being from UK. Everybody looks at them because it's the traditional thing to do. Look up what UK is doing music-wise. We guys who come from Latvia or Estonia or Finland, we are like in the horses. We start from the back. They have like 1 kilometer advance, and then we can start. So it's a different race in a way. The same business, but a different race.
Yeah, but still, I think the content is good enough in our countries to compete with a British or American or whatever. I think music-wise, it's really interesting and capable to compete.
Yeah, well, I believe one of the most well-known acts on Alan's label, or sorry, Alexis' label, is Sigur Rós, and they are from Iceland. That's not a country which is traditionally very known out of their music business, or it's a really small market anyway. But they have really, the Iceland people have very well used their image and the exoticness of Iceland and blah 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 in marketing their music, and that's something we probably should, we Finns and Latvians and Estonians, a bit learn about. As
Yeah,
we
I
don't
think
have that big tradition as England has.
Yeah, the horses have never been the problem in a way, because it's more been the riders or whatever it is like. Well, what comes to distribution, it's like you might have a really fucking great product, but if you don't tell anyone that this is really great, it makes no difference. It's really hard to sell, so we should be promoting the thing some way.
Yeah. One English label guy told in a panel in Oslo like a month ago that, you know, if you don't do promotion, something strange happens. Nothing. But anyway, we are in a transition period because, you know, every week there are record stores, shops closing down, and the physical world is getting smaller and smaller, and we are kind of already in the digital business and the internet and digital world. So there are obviously new rules, and the whole idea of ownership, you know, buying a product and owning a product seems to be slowly disappearing. What's your opinion on this new, like, will streaming replace the ownership of a physical product? You know, how soon will that happen? And do we have a viable business with all the Spotifys and Deezers of this world?
I think these are just the new rules, and you have to somehow deal with them and try to make life easier and in these kind of rules. But I personally still think that this physical physical things will be there, because for me personally, the record means this physical thing. All this digital is like faceless music, which you listen, you get to know what is it, but you can't really get a contact with this, what the artist meant with this, how it. With a physical thing, you see vinyl or CD, you open the sleeve and check the booklet or something, and for me, I still believe in it.
Well, I'd rather say adopt or die, because I don't really. I mean, there will be always this hardcore of people wanting to buy physical product, even 7-inch or 12-inch singles. Alex started from 12-inch singles, I started with 7-inch punk singles, and there's always a small audience for that, but I guess most of the people will be listening to music in the future from Spotify or Deezer or whatever you have, and they don't bother with I'm so fucking tired of this, that bring it on vinyl, we will buy it. You are not going to fucking buy it, you just say it, I know it. Thank you very much.
What happens in Finland, there's always like 30 fucking allowed guys who are wanting that on vinyl everywhere, and then those 30 people go and buy it, and then you have 470 left.
Yeah, but in the music for a long time, there's been the relationship between the artists and the consumers, the fans, has been very important, and that's why the physical product mattered. Now with Spotify and the streaming services, most of them, it's a bit of a problem to identify that relationship, because what the consumers are paying for doesn't relate to the artists that they are listening to on the streaming services, because all the money from these premium services go into a big pot, a pool, and it's distributed then by to the tracks that get a lot of listeners. So if someone is listening to a cool indie band, on Spotify, that money goes to the American Idol winners and Lady Gagas of this world, and not to that cool indie band. So how can we find that relationship between the artists and the fans in this digital streaming world?
I kind of think it's you're kind of missing the point a little bit on this. I use Spotify and I use SoundCloud and I use all these platforms, digital platforms, and I use them as a kind of discovery tool. It's a quick thing to type in, have a quick listen. I'm not really into that. I'll go on to the next one. But the stuff that I do like and the stuff that I value, I will go out and buy it. And I'm the same as you. I want a physical product that connects me to that album. I want to be able to pull it out from my shelf and see what the artwork is, read the sleeve notes. I'm excited by that stuff still, and I think what in this kind of this modern digital age, the artists are also just one click away from their fan base, and that's we kind of we're looking at Spotify, or they're not paying us enough, but you have to cultivate this relationship between the artist and the fans, and that relationship is the strongest relationship. You as a label, you're immaterial. They don't really care about you. They're fans of the artist. So what you try to do now, I'm sure Pip's label does this, is you're looking at avenues to connect directly to your fan base and create the products that your fan base want. And whether that be a deluxe vinyl, double vinyl edition that costs you £15 to make, there might be 250 of them out there that want to buy it for £50. So you can make that product. It could be the T-shirt. It could be, and you have to create a dialogue with the fan base. Then you can find out what they're willing to pay for and how much. And that's, as well as, this, you've got to cultivate the relationship with the key indies and retail, but more importantly, you have to kind of recognize that you can have a direct dialogue from the artist to the fan base. And whether the label facilitates that or the artists themselves facilitate that, that's something you work out along the way. But you know, there are certainly opportunities created because of this one-click culture where you connect immediately, and you have to recognize that it's not all about trying to, you know, get it into a distributor and trying to get it. You know, your fan base is right there. Go and find them.
Yeah, but you are relying on the hardcore fan bases, I'd say, the people who really are into your band and blah blah blah, and that's also, well, for us who come from smaller markets, the fan bases can be even too small for releasing stuff. We were just talking about that it doesn't really make sense to release vinyl for those 30 lads who want it and then have 470 unsold copies. And I do think also that this thing probably unfortunately will change during the years. I mean, you started 25 years ago, I started 25 years ago. I had an assistant who said that his classmates, he was a young guy, probably went just to the army, 19 or something. His classmates from the school thought that he's some kind of weirdo because he buys physical records. The kind of retarded guy, not living in this world anymore.
But that's again a bit like, sorry to say, but you're a bit negative in a way, because I understand and I feel you. But if you think it in a way that what is typically the record label problem is that we think that 2007 we were able to sell 3,000 copies of this, but now it looks like it can be 400 or something. And which is true, and if you try to count it that way, you have like a master budget is gonna end up in €1,000 or whatever. But like what Alex was saying about the fan base and using that is it's if you try to think it in a way that the band has 3,000 fans and there's 1,000 people who could be spending some money on this band. And if they would spend €50 a year for this band, there would be €50,000 to start with, to make CDs, T-shirts, a bit of concerts, whatever. It's much more like it's much more developing starting point instead of selling 30 copies of vinyl and getting €200 for expenses of €10,000. Somehow just trying to change the way of our thinking.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, the internet's had an incredible democratizing effect on the way that people consume music. I think it's much easier. It's much easier to produce music. It's also much easier to get hold of it. You know, there is this kind of one-click culture that I think is actually really beneficial. We can kind of piss and moan about the fact we're not selling tens of thousands of records anymore at £19 a shot, but you also have to see that bands, it's not just about selling your record now. It's about selling your T-shirts, selling tickets to your tour. I think more and more, especially sort of younger bands, are seeing their record as a vehicle to go and sort of pursue other endeavours.
Even carry them home and not leave them to the hotel cleaning ladies, because we are the good guys. Thank you very much.